you're like me, I know many of you probably love ASMR. It's a community of people that like triggers, they like sounds, they like images, and ASMR, as I'm sure you know, is designed to help people relax after a long day. And I've shared with you that through my journey towards wealth building, I really had a hard time sleeping at one point in my life. And I wish that back then I had ASMR to help me relax. And I know that for many of you that have found my channel, you may not understand what ASMR is all about. You may have come here because it's a finance channel, but it's also related to ASMR. So regardless of how you found me, I am so glad that you are here. This channel has allowed me to be creative and be expressive with things that I enjoy, like video and YouTube and communication and training and education, and most importantly, personal finance. So I invite you now to relax. At the end of the day, just take a deep breath. And enjoy the episode. If you're new to my channel, I would encourage you to go back and watch the episodes that are numbered. Like, for example, we're on episode 24. This week, we're doing 24, 25, 26 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. However, you may be watching these in the future, and it doesn't matter when they dropped, right? You're just going through and watching them, hopefully sequentially, because I'm sharing my journey through wealth building years and how I felt, what kinds of things I did, etc. And right now, we're entering into the year 2011. You know, for me, in my personal finance wealth building journey, I remember 2011 as being a new beginning. A new beginning, and financial independence came into play. Up until 2011, I never heard of the term financial independence. And so I know that many of you that may be joining me, if you're not aware of certain communities that I have been aware of through the years, it may be that you don't know what financial independence is either. I know a lot of times we hear things like financial freedom, but financial independence, or you will hear people say FI, is something that at this point in my life, I was already 6 years into wealth building. 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I started hearing about, things like blogs. People were writing articles online. And it really was in 2011 and 2012 when I started reading more about this whole term called financial independence. There was a blog, or there is a blog with Mr. Money Mustache, Pete Adney, who was very clever with his writing. And also I started learning about Vicki Robin, who wrote a book called Your Money or Your Life. I think her husband was it Dominguez? I can't remember. But I remember that I Googled and I found Vicki Robin and her husband on the Oprah Winfrey Show talking about the concept of if you were to buy something that had value, let's say a certain article of clothing, and let's say that article of clothing was $300, and you thought to yourself, well, I'm just going to go ahead and buy it, and I'm going to put it on a credit card and not really care. Vicki Robin, in her writings with the book called Your Money or Your Life, really helped people, including myself, realize that you don't want to trade your time for money, or maybe there's a better way than trading time for money, if that makes sense. So when we're broke, we don't have much money, unfortunately we have to work for money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a better way, which I'll be talking about in this episode, to think about money over time, is to think about it as building an engine that is so large that in and of itself it can generate an income. Does that make sense? So it was around this time again in 2011 that I started hearing about all of these concepts. It was about this time that I also started learning about what is called the 4% rule. In a nutshell, many people in the personal finance space believe that you can withdraw 4% of your assets per year and probably never run out of money in about a 30-year period. So if you retire, then your money should last until the end of life. That's what the concept was all about. So I remember hearing that, or thinking that if I could just get to $1 million, and if I take 4% off of that per year, then that means I would get $40,000 per year. Now, $1 million to me was still, in 2011, something that I could not even think that I could get to. And I think I've shared with you before that even today, in 2024, only about 10% of people ever get to $1 million net worth. Okay, so those are some of the statistics, and we hear people say, well, why shoot for $1 million because it's not what it was worth years ago, like back in the 60s or 70s. Well, I mean, if nobody's getting there anyway, or very few people, then why not make it a goal? So in my mind in 2011, you have to remember, my net worth at that point was $100,000, somewhere in there, maybe $150,000, because I know in 2012 it going to pursue. You're going to pursue a new beginning, and financial independence would be that goal. Now, I also remember thinking that if I could attain the goal of $1 million in assets, I knew that then that would generate the $40,000 that I talked about, which meant that my number one goal or strategy within this goal would be to make sure that I kept my living expenses as low as they could possibly be. Does that make sense? I wanted and knew that I could probably get to $1 million. But if I were to then use that as the goal, I could not do what most people did. And what most people do is they have expenses that go far beyond $40,000 per year. So I knew in 2011, above all else, my expenses would have to be really low. Now you guys know I'm going to be sharing with you my build a budget, what my expenses are, etc. But just as a rough estimate right now, even in 2024, even though my income is about $120,000 per year, my expenses are only $20,000 per year. Now $20,000 of expenses, plus of course another $10,000 for fun and other, brings you to about $30,000 per year. That's really super low for somebody with an income of $120,000, right? So I want you to think about that for just a minute. Think about yourself, what type of income you have right now. Again, I don't know if you're just starting out or if you're making, 50 or 60 or 100,000 per year. You may have made some mistakes with buying big homes, having expensive cars, taking big trips. In your mind right now, you might be thinking that there's no way you could live on $40,000 per year. So even with that equation that I just gave you, $20,000 of expenses, and when I say expenses, I mean my condo insurance. I already paid this condo off. Food, gas, electric, internet, homeowners insurance, car insurance, etc. I own my car outright. I don't know if I told you that yet. I bought a Mazda CX-5 at the end of 2023. I paid for it in cash. So that keeps your expenses really low. I also started thinking in 2011 that I would have to pad some of those numbers. I call it a pad, meaning you don't want to get older and approach retirement with having really large expenses because there's no wiggle room, there's no pad. So I need to have a pad in the amount of money that I take or could take off of my investments. For things like if I retire early before age 65, then I have to pay for what? My own health care. And even though the government, through Obamacare and now the Biden Affordable Care Act, which adopted Obamacare, I would be able to qualify for subsidies through Marketplace. I've already done all the research, and some friends of mine are doing it right now. This law or rule is going to be revisited at the end of 2025 with the new president that takes office, but right now people are able to, maybe retire before the age of 65 and pay for their own health care, but they only need maybe a couple thousand a year as opposed to 10 or 12,000 per year because of the subsidies of the government that they will give you because of the income that you're showing for the year. So if you take a little bit off of your investments, you're being subsidized by the government. I'll say, okay, so more on that a little bit later. But I started dreaming about the future of retirement, and I knew that I had to build buffers or pads within the need of, let's say, or the amount that I could pay myself in this example of $40,000. I did not want the need to be $40,000. I wanted it to be lower so that you have the pads in place to use if you need it, if that makes sense. So again, I remember then in 2011, it was a new beginning for this whole era of financial independence and the whole movement of the FIRE community, which is financial independence and maybe retire early. That really caught on fire, I guess we could say, pun intended, in 2011 and 2012. And even though I was already on my way of 6 years of believing in myself and believing what I could accomplish, I still got a lot of encouragement and motivation from the FI and the FIRE community. So, 2011, my mantra was financial independence. It was the practice in which I started to live. It was the why of what I was doing. And I knew that I wanted to build an engine, again, as large as that engine could possibly be. Okay, so that's what I have for you guys today on episode number 24. Thank you so much for joining me. In the next episode coming up on Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about a very small inheritance that I had in 2011 and how I use that to my advantage. So I'll see you next time, right here on ASMR Money Mentor. Have a good night.